I'm Terry Powell, and joining me today is Mrs. Theda Dayhoff. It is Friday, February 13th, 2009. Thank you, Ms. Dayhoff, for joining us today. First, where were you born?
I was born in New Windsor.
And where did you grow up?
In New Windsor, Maryland.
New Windsor, Maryland. And what did your neighborhood look like when you were growing up?
Well, it was just a small town, but it was a place, I was one of 7 children, and the kids all really loved that little town. And it was a typical small town neighborhood, close friends. Your neighbors were always friendly, and it was just a nice place to grow up.
Thank you. Could you tell us about the hotel that was in New Windsor?
Luckily, I was raised right across the street from the Dillman Hotel. And it was named after a man named Louis Dillman owned the hotel. And people would come up from the city and spend their summers there. And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I loved summertime anyhow, but the ladies would come up and in the afternoon, they would go out on the upstairs porch. And at that time, everybody smoked, especially people from the city. And this lady, I thought her name was Mrs. Beads, because she always wore beads, but her name was Mrs. Deeds. And she would sit up on the porch with her real long cigarette holder, and I thought that was the most marvelous thing. And then in the evening, after the evening meal, of course they didn't have air conditioning then, and the doors would be open to the to the parlor, no less. And they had people come in and sing and dance and entertainment. Of course, we could see all that right across the street. It was very interesting.
Now, as a child, did you go inside the hotel at any time?
I've been in there, but not when they had guests, you know.
Okay, thank you. And your father, what did he do?
My father was a railway postal clerk, and that's when they sorted all the mail right on the train. And he worked from Baltimore to Cumberland, and he was gone 2 weeks and home a week. My mother said he treated us kids like guests, because he only, you know, she had us all the time, and he was just there, you know, 2 weeks at a time.
And what was your father's name?
John Oden Warner.
And he worked two weeks gone. Could you tell us about the name of the company? And
well, he worked for the B&O Railroad Company. Well, actually, he worked for the government. He was very offended if you referred to him working on the railroad. He worked for the government, and his run was usually from Baltimore to Cumberland, and from Cumberland back to Baltimore. And then he had somebody pick him up in Baltimore on Saturday evening, and then he'd be home for a week, and then he'd be gone again for 2 weeks. And he actually, he worked for the government for 32 years, then he had to retire when he was 65.
okay, now can you remember your first job in Carroll County?
When I was 14, I couldn't wait to go to work and have lots of money to spend, I thought. And I worked at Shriver's Canning Factory in New Windsor, and I operated a machine called a corn husker that automatically husked the corn to be canned.
And when you say lots of money, can you give us an idea?
I think I made 15 cents an hour.
And this is during the Depression?
No, I think it was really after the Depression. It was more in the 40s, I believe.
And so you made approximately $1.50, $2 a day?
Mm-hmm.
And
Something
what does a girl do with $2?
Oh, it went a long ways. I remember my first job, I forget what I bought my mother, but I always bought my mother something, and each one of the younger children, I'd get them a little trinket or something. But it went a long ways compared to what it goes today.
Could you walk to work?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Alrighty. And then could you explain maybe something about entertainment? What did you do to amuse yourselves in New Windsor?
Well, we played a lot of games. Some of them were made up, and some of them were what all the other kids. We loved to play dodgeball and softball. And then in colder weather, we played jacks, and we played cards, and we had favorite radio programs. We sat around a radio the way people watch TV now. And I don't ever remember being bored as a child. And we took long, long walks. And it was okay to walk railroad tracks then. And we'd walk the railroad down to what we called Second Bridge, and then climb over the fence and pick wildflowers. That was a big deal then.
Can you recall some of the radio stations that you liked?
WBAL, I remember that very well. And now I can't really remember anymore, but our main one was WBAL.
And were there weekly shows that you couldn't miss?
Yes. I remember my brothers, they were very fond of Jack Armstrong, and then there was Tom Mix and all those. They were the boys' favorites. And then there were soaps. Mike Al Sunday and Stella Dallas and Vic and Sade, and just like there's the soap operas today.
That's terrific. Well, you mentioned your brothers. Would you tell us their names as well?
My older brother's name was Alfred Odin Warner. I had a younger brother, John Lester Warner, and of course when we were attacked by Pearl Harbor, both of my brothers went in the service. And Alfred was in the Atlantic, and my other brother was in the Pacific, during the war.
And during that time, did you have communication with your brothers through letters? Or?
Oh, yes. We wrote every day. Mm-hmm. And we, of course, no TV, we didn't know, but there would be a list of the casualties every day in the paper, and we scanned them constantly.
Mm-hmm. And rationing, was there rationing in New Windsor?
I remember the rationing books, but people were so patriotic then. People did not complain about the shortage of gas. We had shoe coupons, sugar coupons, and no, that's the amazing thing. I've never heard anyone. We just all did it together.
Thank you. And how about school? You went to school in New Windsor?
Yes, I started first grade, and I spent my whole time in New Windsor. But it was not a one-room school, but I know we had first and second grade in one room. And then when I got to the 6th and 7th grades, they had portables, attached to that one school. And then later went to the New Windsor High School.
Was there anything like a school bus? Or did everybody?
No, they had school buses for the rural children, but as I said, we lived really close to the school. And all of us kids came home for lunch. And in those days, everybody cooked 3 meals a day. And we came home every day for lunch.
And there was a high school in New Windsor?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Was it called?
New Windsor High School. Mm-hmm.
And are there any teachers you remember after all these years, in elementary or later?
I remember my first grade teacher, Miss Edna Wilson. I remember my 5th grade teacher, Loretta Callahan. And then I remember Paul Hyde, who made quite an impression on us in the 6th grade, and Miss Ivy Fowler. She was a wonderful teacher.
Thank you. Now, your mom, when she went, well, what was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Bessie Rosella Warner,
and when she went shopping for groceries and clothes, where did a family in New Windsor go?
Well, we went to a store called Rip's Groceries, but if we needed other things. Our dad usually did that because there were 7 of us kids, and either, I don't remember, I imagine my mother was pregnant most of the time with 7 children. They were all born within 10 or 12 years, and Daddy would be in Baltimore, see, waiting for his ride, and he did the shopping, like coats and things like that for us. And then there was a store right up the street from us called the Ark. It sold everything from lace tablecloths to horse collars. And I remember Mother going there. We only lived 2 doors from there, and buying pajamas and personal things for the girls. I do remember that.
And there seems to be in every small town a store that's most popular with the kids. Was there one in New Windsor?
There was a place called Brownie's Corner, and that was a confectionery store, a soda fountain, and that sort of thing. That was more or less for the preteens, teenagers. We weren't known as teenagers then, you know, but it was, and they had a jukebox in there, and they sold, you know, things that kids like, ice cream sundaes and sodas and that sort of thing.
If someone wanted to know more about New Windsor other than the hotel and those stores, is there something else that you think they might be interested in?
Well, at the time I was growing up, we had, it was Blue Ridge College. And now it is the Brethren Service Center that is known worldwide now. And I think New Windsor can also be classified as a beautiful little town. I think it was Carroll County has always been an agricultural center. And I was told they had these beautiful homes on the street now called Church Street. And when I was growing up, they called it Quality Hill. And as the farmers retired, I guess the more prestigious you were, the bigger you were, the bigger your house was. But they had beautiful homes, especially on that street, the large Victorian homes.
So the current Church Street used to be?
Quality Hill.
Quality Hill. Interesting. Would you ever have an occasion to go to the other towns like Westminster or Hampstead?
Not until we got older, no. And then my girlfriend's parents had cars and everything. But as children, we just stayed kind of in New Windsor.
Thank you.
And we went on, we did a lot of like picnics, and we always had somebody also, my friends, my brother's friends at our house. We had a big house, and my mother was very generous. It was just never just us at the table. Even during the war, it was always somebody else's family, you know, kids that we brought home.
So when you had free time, basically you kids just made up your own entertainment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There wasn't necessarily a league or a club or anything. You just invented your...
We all belonged to, we all went to the Methodist Church, which still is there, of course. I still attend that church. And we had Sunday school, and a younger group, they had Epworth League, and we were all participated in that. And the Christmas pageants or anything that was going on, we all were a part of that.
In the name of the church?
At St. Paul's United Methodist.
How about the holidays? Was there anything special about Christmas or Halloween that you did?
Oh yeah, we never bought costumes. You just put on something, you know. But we always had a good time.
Did you trick or treat? Or is that a new idea?
I think we never heard of trick or treat. We just went around and rapped on the doors, you know, and did things like that. But the older boys, they did things that we wouldn't dream of doing, you know, like some really bad stuff, taking farmers' wagons and putting them someplace else. But we, you know, we didn't do anything because we knew we weren't supposed to.
And Christmas, you had Christmas trees?
Oh yeah, that in those days your Christmas tree was the most important part of Christmas because people didn't spend the money on gifts the way they do now, and your Christmas tree was never set up until all the kids went to bed on Christmas Eve, and Christmas morning, that was a big part of your Christmas. And we each got a small gift, but it was nothing compared to what they do now. Absolutely nothing. But we thought it was wonderful.
Yes. 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 Summer, can you tell me when you had time off and you had 10 weeks to kill with your buddies, what are you guys doing around town?
Well, on really hot days, we went swimming. We walked down the railroad track to a place called Double Bridge, and there was just a creek, that's all it was, but we all went swimming. One of my fondest memories is coming home, and it's hot, you know, very hot, and coming home, and in the kitchen, my mother would have a crock. It was made out of crockery, you know, the old crock, and a big chunk of ice in it, and the best iced tea I ever drank in my life. I've never tasted any like it since. And we went swimming, and we all had our chores to do, and we helped in the garden and that sort of thing. I helped my mother can as I grew up, you know, can things for winter.
Was there a ball diamond?
Yes, that was near the Blue Ridge College at the time. And then everybody, I know there was another ball diamond out called Hibbert's Meadow. That's where the young boys all got together and played baseball. And of course, we played in our own yard, and in, you know.
Well, let me backtrack to the college for a minute. Did those students interact with the townspeople, or did they pretty much stay on campus?
Well, they didn't really. So they pretty much, well, you would see them around town, but see, they were a lot older than I was then. And most of the time, they were just with their own group. You'd see them a lot at the local drugstore and and Brownie's Corner.
Well, and would there be a 4th of July celebration in New Windsor?
Really.
No? Parades? Firemen's Carnival?
Oh, yeah, Firemen's Carnivals, and the Ladies Auxiliary, which I was a part of. And our drill team, the New Windsor Ladies drill team, were state champions for 3 years. And of course, everybody helped, the young people and the older people too, helped with the New Windsor Carnival. It was like almost like a big family. Everybody helped each other. Also, when anyone got sick in the neighborhood, everybody helped. They'd take meals or go sit up with someone that was very ill. We didn't have the kind of medical care like we have today. Was
there a doctor in the town?
Yes, Dr. Gady.
And he had an office on Main Street or something?
It wasn't Main Street, but I forget what they called that. Church Street now. Yeah. I forget what it was called then. And he delivered all of us kids at home.
Wow, no kidding.
All but one.
He was the doctor, and everybody went to the same doctor.
Yes. And then later, we had another doctor. We had 2 doctors then, Dr. Marsh. Now, there was enough people for that time in New Windsor. They both, you know, had plenty of patients.
Did he serve as the dentist also?
No, we had a dentist. Mm-hmm. Well, we had a dentist.
Wow. Well, I'm going to ask you if there's something that you'd like to say about Carroll County that we haven't covered. Can you think of anything?
Except that I'd rather live here than any place else in the world. I didn't always think that.
Well, I think that's terrific. Well, I would like to thank Mrs. Theda Dayhoff on this Friday, February 13th, 2009, and talking about Carroll County, Maryland.